Hey gang, with any luck you've found the videos we drop showcasing this adapter for playing 14-inch reels of quarter-inch audio tape. For example, on a Crown 822 or a Crown 724 or even an Ampex ATR 700. The flexibility of this rig allows swapping nearly any deck for playback in this space below. This is the only one I built back in the 1990s, and it started out with a VM, a Voice of Music model 722, because it had a 2-track head for stereo. And since these tapes were produced for radio stations as 2-track, 2-channel, they were totally compatible. You see, I had rescued an entire library of classical music on 14-inch reels when I was a chief engineer and station manager for an AM/FM combo back in the 80s. Management wanted me to trash them. I wanted to preserve them and be able to play them without cutting the tape off and spinning it onto smaller reels. Over time, I got my hands on better decks and got ever better results. And this is it. I call it Merlin, as an homage to the Merlin retrofits for reel-to-reel videotape decks in the 80s and 90s. The idea being larger reels for longer playing times. Now you're asking yourself, what does this have to do with repurposing a vintage reel-to-reel videotape recorder? Well, let me show you something. This is the Sony AV-3650 I worked on back in episode 3. I decided to repurpose it and include it in my altar of empirical entertainment. The challenges emerged immediately, however, not the least of which recording tape. I bought a lot of vintage stock on the internet, most of which was useless. Even unopened, sealed, virginal stock was problematic because over time the adhesives decompose, the oxide sheds, and the tape, if it works at all, will fail. Or worse, contaminate the tape path. I can't imagine having to clean a machine after every use. Not ideal. And honestly, approaching deal breaker territory. So I had to come up with a solution. Here's why. Here's an original spool of vintage videotape that I recorded on this machine, no less. Grossly underperforms. Note the tracking meter. Even the self-recording, which should be full scale, lacks amplitude, due in large part to the aging oxide and adhesive. But check out this self-recording with brand new contemporary stock. The tracking meter is nearly full scale. But now you're wondering, where did that tape come from? Well, I'll tell you. VHS stock. Now, as someone out there is no doubt saying, VHS tape stock is too thin to be used on a brute force machine like this from 50 years ago. And they'd be right. Here's the first of my caveats. I tweaked the forward back tension, take-up tension, shuttle tensions, brake tensions, head-to-tape contact tension. VHS tape stock, also known as thin base for a reason, is vulnerable. But VHS tape transports treat tape handling with kid gloves. And now, this deck does too. Here's the next caveat. Original reel-to-reel stock is 1 mil thick, or so it's labeled. A standard 7-inch reel holds 2,370 feet, or 720 meters of videotape. 63 minutes at 7.5 inches per second. A 5-inch reel holds 1,210 feet, or 370 meters, for 32 minutes of tape. That said, because VHS tape stock is thinner by half or more, it's possible to get twice as much on a reel. Over 2 hours, in fact, on a 7-inch reel, and as much as 65 minutes on a 5-inch reel. Caveat number 3. A typical T120 only holds 812 feet. It doesn't need much because the tape speed is so painfully slow in a VCR, but at 7.5 inches per second on a VTR, 812 feet is only 21 minutes. So on the one hand, I've got room for more tape, and on the other hand, 21 minutes per cassette. Solution? Pancake. going to be necessary to spin this onto the reel sort of in reverse. This is actually the bottom of the back side of this reel. Now, you're probably still asking yourself, well, what's the point? What's the purpose? Well, let me show you something else. I've taken the liberty to repurpose this VTR as a digital audio tape recorder and include it here now that I can record on it. My research has shown VHS tape stock outperforms vintage reel-to-reel stock, and since that reel-to-reel stock has issues causing premature aging and tape pad contamination, it's a win-win. You see, all magnetic tape will age out eventually, and here's the way I see it. Vintage stock took 40 plus years to age out. If substituting VHS stock buys another 40 years, I'm down with that. There are some folks out there that have great luck baking old tape for one last hurrah. It's sort of like having your last meal prepared for you. So it comes down to either being a restaurant owner who wants to stay in business or being Gordon Ramsay. One last meal and I'm out of here. Food for thought. But getting back to this VTR and the PCM 701, I can record tapes in 2-track stereo with a dynamic range and frequency response equivalent to compact disc. As you know, CDs sample audio at 44.1 kilohertz. A PCM encoder, in order to be compatible with NTSC video standards, which means 525 lines per video frame at a 60 hertz line frequency, well, it has to encode at 44.056 kilohertz due to the infinite wisdom of the NAB. And I'm not talking about the New American Bible here. I mean our buddies over at the National Association of Broadcasters, America. On the other hand, in Europe, their video format is based on a 50 hertz electrical system and 625 lines per frame. Thus, sampling at 44.1 kilohertz is possible. For those reasons and some fancy mathematics, this home theater receiver will accept a 44.056 kilohertz sample, so it's not a problem for playback. Now that this VTR has been repurposed as a stereo digital audio deck, I wondered what else it might be capable of, and discovered some things in the process. Like when I employ a modified PCM 601 and utilize the PDIF RCA inputs and outputs, this machine becomes a bitstream data recorder. And I'll get to that. Give me a minute. I can record 5.1 surround sound audio and play back vintage recordings remastered from original multi-track sessions like Billy Joel, T-Rex, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Moody Blues, Spyro Gyra, George Benson, you name it, all in DTS 5.1 surround sound. As the story goes, engineers took the original recording session master tapes and remixed them for 5.1 surround sound. Initially, we dubbed those multi-channel files to an Alesis ADAT 8-track tape deck. It was the only way to play 6 discrete channels or more through my home theater system. You see, ADAT doesn't support PCM or DTS. Instead, Alesis has a proprietary format that uses light pipe, which is a fancy name for an optical connection. But with a SPDIF encoder, I can take 6 discrete audio channels, in this case 5.1, into the 601 SPDIF input as a DTS bitstream. Take the video output of the 601 into the VTR, use new VHS Pancake stock, and record over 2 hours of 5.1 DTS. Due to the fact that DTS works under a bitstream, it works by packaging its multi-channel audio data into a format that can be transmitted through the SPDIF connector. The receiver sees this data and reads the metadata to determine the amount of channels needed and what type of signal is being received. The question is this signal stereo PCM or is it 6 channels? Since the receiver is a DTS decoder, it determines how to decode the data stream and send the discrete channels to the speakers in the entertainment center. Now, what would happen if you were to listen to the stereo bit stream? Well, it would sound like this. In a nutshell, DTS works by compressing multiple channels of audio into a single encoded bit stream that conforms to SPDIF standards, appearing as a 2-channel PCM signal. A compatible decoder at the receiving end is required to reconstruct the original 6 channels of audio for playback. The other thing I want to mention is we investigated the ability to record Dolby Digital, but couldn't because Dolby Digital samples at 48 kHz, not 44.1. Not a deal breaker, and we discovered what the system is really capable of. I mean, what is it someone once said?
I don't care what anything was designed to do. I care about what it can do.
Exactly. And to be fair, we tested this process on VHS decks as well and discovered a couple of things. The compatibility of a VCR is critical to ensure stable DTS playback. When we experimented with a lower-end deck, the limited stability induced jitter and caused dropouts in DTS, but good old PCM was solid. And with a higher-end machine, PCM, DTS, no worries. In fact, the tape recorded on the lower-end machine that suffered from jitter played flawlessly on the higher-end machine. Tape handling, stability, and better than average bandwidth makes all the difference. Now, I could speak to how to find a VHS deck to work with SPDIF DTS to duplicate what we're attempting here. But the truth is, unless it's an SVHS deck, I wouldn't expect it to work too well. And that said, a standard VHS deck with SQPB will probably work. Since it can demodulate an SVHS tape, the deck has the necessary electronics and video bandwidth to exploit higher quality. Stability is going to be all about the tape transport and tape handling. In my experience, an SVHS deck will have both. Good luck. Now my last caveat. A Sony PCM 601 is internally locked to 44.1 kHz. It absolutely loves 44.1 kHz. Know what it doesn't like? Any digital recording sampled at 32 kHz and 48 kHz. I tend to refer to them as broccoli and Brussels sprouts. The video input and output are reclocked at 44.056 kHz in order to be compatible with North American video standards. Furthermore, and most importantly, A 601 won't encode a video signal from a SPDIF input that is copy protected, at least not right out of the box, because there's this thing called copy prohibition. That little light doesn't mean Tinkerbell's alive. It means you can't get there from here without divine intervention. Sony, in partnership with Philips, developed the SPDIF we all know and love, and in so doing meant to prevent folks from making endless digital copies. The Sony Philips Digital Interface Protocol includes a bit in the data stream. It's just a little bit, teeny tiny, but annoying. Like sitting in an old wooden chair in short pants, it's a splinter in your bottom end, irritating, hard to get to. And seeking treatment is when you find out who your friends really are. This bit in the data stream, when detected through demultiplexing, disables the encoding process. Why? Record labels. Record labels scream bloody murder when consumers make their own recordings because, as everyone knows, record labels already do such an amazing job of separating people from their money. In another episode, I walked you through how to modify a PCM 601 to pass SPDIF to video, lifting any copy-prohibited 44K content. And by the way, the modification doesn't touch the bitstream, so quality is unaffected. That episode I've titled Prohibition Repealed. Stay tuned. Hopefully this all made sense to you. If so, give us a thumbs up. And if not, let us know in the comments, and we'll fix that too. When you subscribe to our channel, it lets the gods of YouTube know we're doing something right. And when you click on the bell, you'll get an alert that my coffee break is over and another episode is dropped. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon, and thank you for your time this time. Till next time, be well.